Following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and the best use of a cheese grater ever.
Ever.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And this is podcast episode number 297. This week we're going to be discussing the very recent horror film Evil Dead Rise.
That's right, baby.
I was planning ahead before we started recording, and I was like, do I say it in a funny, do you say it like this? Is that what you have to do? Is that part of the, I don't know, part of the social contract of talking about horror films?
It's probably better in this case to kind of channel your inner Ash, your inner Bruce Campbell, and be like, okay. Evil Dead Rise, groovy, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Groovy. So before we get into our details of the movie, let's just talk quick thoughts. Last time we recorded, I went first. So, Steve, Age Before Beauty, your turn. What did you think?
Okay, I'm both. So where are we now?
You're old and beautiful?
Yes.
Well, you just keep telling yourself nice things in the mirror.
All right.
Okay. So Evil Dead Rise. Thoughts
I will happily go first.
Okay.
This movie is awesome. I thought it was thoroughly enjoyable. When they first announced back in 2014 or 2013 that they were rebooting Evil Dead, and they came out with just the movie entitled Evil Dead. And it starred Jane Leeves, who, we've seen her in a bunch of stuff since then. I like anytime I hear, oh, they're remaking an old movie, part of me dies inside, because I'm like, why? Why remake? The old movie was fine. It was perfect. There's nothing you could do to make it better,
Right.
And the Evil Dead, the one back then in 2013, I thought was really good. And when they announced that this one was coming again, I'm like, I don't, okay, we'll have to see. And, even though it uses one of the tropes that I just forking hate and think is done to death right at the beginning, this movie was amazeballs cool. And it is a worthy addition to the Evil Dead series, universe, whatever you want to call it. It has all of the bugs and the vomit and the blood and the eyeballs and everything that just make an Evil Dead movie. So, and you can tell that it's produced by Tappert and Raimi and Campbell. Their fingerprints at that level are there, in terms of they went out and found people to make this movie that kind of see things the way they see things, in terms of how you make an Evil Dead movie, and it shows. And that's I loved it. There's so many cool things in there. There's a bunch of great lines. There's some funny bits. There's the gross out stuff is just bloody disgusting, awful, awesome. And so I again, this was a great movie. When I saw it in the theater, I loved every minute of it. And when it came up on Max, which is where it lives right now, I've watched it probably like 5 or 6 times since it came out. So,
really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, nice. This movie's great. So, and then just a little bonus. In June, I was at a convention with Elisa Sutherland, who plays the mom in the movie.
Oh, nice.
And she was awesome. She's really good. She's Australian. And so she's got an Australian accent, and she used to be a supermodel before she became an actor. So she is incredibly, really, really easy to look at. And she was super fun and told a lot of great stories about it. So, yeah, it made my love of the movie even more when I saw how cool she was. So, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it makes me look. I mean, I'm already looking forward to Days of the Dead in November, but she is coming,
She is.
and I'm very excited for that. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So,
I saw her in Days of the Dead in Indianapolis, and
mhm.
I mean, they had like normally at the cons we go to, there's like one dealer's room. And here at the hotel in Indy, they had like 3 dealers rooms set up.
Ooh, wow.
And and so it was a little different. And the line for her went out of her dealer's room and down the hall. I mean, there had to be 300, 400 people in line, easy. Pretty much all day that I was there. I went for one day and it never got any. The only time it was less was when she went and did her panel. That was it. So I mean, it was So she was definitely the headliner. So
Nice.
it was really amazing. So
Yeah.
so anyway, what did you think?
So, much like whenever we cover other horror films, I would say, with the exception of like The Thing and The Shining, which are movies that I've seen many times prior to us having the podcast, this is only my second Evil Dead franchise movie, and the only thing I have to compare it to is the original.
Right.
So I was a little trepidatious going in because I was afraid that there would be tons of like in jokes and things that I was really afraid it would connect too much to the other movies and I wouldn't know what was going on in certain moments. Like I was afraid. I was worried about that. And my fears were totally unfounded. Now, based on the notes you have, there are definitely there's connective tissue with the franchise. There's Easter eggs and things. And even for me, like just for pop culture purposes, I saw, connections here and there that even I picked up on, but also I see even the connective tissue to the original movie, which is, like I said, the only one I've seen, and just the structure of it. And I loved this movie. I thought it was so gross and so awesome. I spent like probably a good 10 minutes with like doing the actual cover my eyes. Like, or closed it. I had to close my eyes for a couple. Well, some stuff like, and we'll get into details when we get there, but there are a couple of things where like, I have to look away. I just get so grossed out. And they did it really well, but they also had, it's good source material to pull from because the original movie is so great. And the universe of Evil Dead, as it were. Like you said, there are people who have a lot of investment in the franchise that were a part of it, and you can see their fingerprints there, like you said. And also, they did a great job. These actors are fantastic. They all were really, really good. Even some of the like just random like the neighbors and whatever. Like everybody was really great at what they did. And I there was only like maybe a couple of things that I was like, oh, really? But overall, as a horror movie to recommend to other people, this is a great movie. It checks all the boxes of a great horror movie. I'm actually kind of glad that I was worried because it made me enjoy the experience more, because I was nervous, and then as it started going, I'm like, oh, this is great. And then you're like, you get relaxed and you're like, gross. so there's that. But yeah, just fantastic. Highly recommended. I don't know that I'm going to watch it 5 or 6 more times, but if it comes up and I'm with other people, we'll see. Maybe in a group setting. Who knows? But yeah, this is great. This is a great movie. I can't say enough about it. Yeah, good times. And I even watched it on a smaller screen. I was on my iPad, I think, watching this. Yeah, so I have it like right next to my face, and all of this disgusting stuff is happening like 2 inches from my nose.
Wow.
Yeah. So, a little PTSD today. Don't mind me. Yeah. So anyway, great movie. before we get into our top moments from the movie itself, let's just go through a quick description. I just pulled this right from IMDb, but if you want to go ahead and give us that description, Steve, then we'll move on.
All right. We will. All right. So again, this is 2023's Evil Dead Rise. And the description we have is as follows. A twisted tale of two estranged sisters whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons. And don't you just hate when that just cuts your family reunion short? Thrusting them into me too. Thrusting them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. And that is your episode or your movie description.
And here's the thing. I do have one thing, which is, I don't know, like, I can imagine, like, some other nightmarish versions of families. I mean, this is bad. Don't get me wrong. This was a bad family reunion. But, there's, could it be worse? It can always be worse.
It can always be worse.
Yeah.
And I would point out that, the old saying, the family that slays together stays together. So there's that.
The family that bleeds together feeds together. I don't know. Anyway, so let's first, before we get into our points, let's talk the writer and the director, which is easy to do because it's literally the same person.
It is, yes. It's a dude by the name of Lee Cronin, and this is his first feature film. So
that's amazing.
It is, and wow, what a debut, right? Yeah, he had produced or directed a bunch of short films before this.
Okay.
And he obviously caught the attention of, as I said, Sam Raimi and Bob Tappert, who, they produced and directed the original films and also produced, and I think Raimi directed some of the episodes of the series Ash vs. the Evil Dead as well. And, again, he won them over and said, yeah, I can do an Evil Dead movie. And yes, he was correct because he can do an Evil Dead movie. So
yeah, he was not lying when he said that, which is good. That worked out really well for the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lee Cronin is the man responsible for the script and then the execution. So
fantastic.
Good job.
This is great because like sort of the structure of the movie kind of followed a little bit kind of like the TV shows we cover. There was a cold open, which is great. I love a good cold open. It's sort of an establishing scene. And, so we've got this, quote unquote cold open at a cabin. We've seen this before. The boyfriend's like, oh, she's not feeling well. Where have we seen that before? And then, because that's not going to end very well.
Right.
Right. But yeah, the structure of the cold open, I liked that. It, set the stage. It harkened back to a lot of stuff. You've got more notes on the cold open than I do. I like how it ended, but you've got some stuff in there we should chat about.
Well, yeah, I mean, the opening shot of the movie is this POV shot, and it's I'm guessing it was a drone shot, and it's going over the water, maybe like a foot or two, and you kind of hear that deep droney, sound, and it's kind of a throwback to all of the Evil Dead movies when the demonic forces are kind of moving when they're not inside of someone, and you kind of get that and it's kind of swerving back and forth, and in this case it's kind of following the stream, and it's going around the corners and everything, and then you see this girl. It comes into a lake, and there's a pier, and there's a girl sitting on it, and she's like reading her book, and the drone comes right up to her. And again, being Evil Dead fans, and you should even remember this from the original movie, our thought is, that's the demon, and it's gonna get her right off the bat, boom. And of course, then again, nice little joke is that it actually is a drone, and it's the kind of the meat puppet boyfriend is, he's got the goggles on and the remote control, and he's piloting the drone, and he used it to kind of scare and freak her out. And we also get a little expo dump about how, his girlfriend, which is the girl's just friend, is sick and is in the cabin. And there was supposed to be a whole bunch of people there, but nobody else bothered to show up. Of course, as we find out, there was an earthquake the day before in California where this is taking place. So maybe they had other stuff to do. We don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And so the friend that's reading the book, she does not like the boyfriend, and she thinks, she does refer to him as a brainless meat puppet at one point.
Love it.
So she goes into the house to see how her friend is doing, and she is reading her book, and then again another nod to the original Evil Dead. The girl in the bed, her name is Jessica. She's kind of out of it and kind of, is kind of rolling around in the bed. And so the girl's kind of sit down. So she's reading, and all of a sudden she hears a noise and looks, and the girl is sitting up with her back to Teresa, to the girl that's reading. And Jessica, the girl that was the sick girl in bed, she then starts reciting word for word the page of Wuthering Heights that Teresa is reading over in the corner, right?
Yeah.
And it's a definite callback to the Evil Dead. If you remember, Ash's sister starts reading the cards. The other two girls are doing they'll hold up a card and say, "What card am I holding?" And then the other girl kind of put her finger up to her temple and go, "It's the Ace of Spades," and and so on. Well, then Ash's sister, who is, she's possessed basically. She starts getting card after card after card correct. Bing, 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 and it's unbelievable. And very similar kind of a moment here. And of course, then the blood starts flowing because she just grabs hold of that girl's ponytail and just rips her scalp right off, right? So it's
it's so good.
Oh, it was. You get a scalping right off the bat, and so then she kind of staggers out to the pier where the dim bulb boyfriend is still out there screwing around, and she's in shock, and her pretty much her brain's exposed and blood's all over her face and running all over her, and he's like, "What the hell?" And then the other girl comes up and she falls into the water. And so he jumps in after her, and then he goes down in a big frothy, bloody, thing, like almost like a scene from Jaws. And then we get to to your moment that you notice, which is the possessed girl literally, levitates out of the water and is like hovering right above it. And behind her, you see the tree line on the other side of the lake, and behind the trees, the title card, The Evil Dead Rise, kind of slowly comes up behind her. And it's really, really impressive. And you're like, holy crap, what is going on? It's amazing.
It's great because it visually, I wasn't expecting it that way for the title to sort of reveal itself. I always like when there's an interesting way to sort of put the title on the screen. And you literally are 30 to 45 seconds out from when someone was scalped right in front of you. So your mouth is already on the floor. And then she comes out of the water, and like you said, she's like floating, like her tip, or her toes are touching the tip of the water. Right. And then she's levitating, and then it comes up behind and it's just visually amazing. I didn't notice it myself, but I read somewhere that had the trivia about the the IMDb trivia that they said that when it comes up, you can see actually Evil Dead Rise is actually reflected in the water. I didn't notice that, but I guess if it's there, that's super cool.
Yep. It is there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is there. And so you can kind of get the sense that the scalp girl can actually read Evil Dead Rise behind her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned that Teresa was calling the boyfriend the brainless meat puppet, and she says it to Jessica, kind of offhand, and she thinks she's clever and funny. And right as she gets the right before Jessica pulls her braid and like pulls her hair and her scalp off, she says, "Who's the brainless meat puppet now?" And I'm like, holy shit, that was amazing.
Oh, yeah. It was. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
That was one of those moments where I sit there and I'm like, this is what makes horror movies great. It's that like adrenaline rush of, oh my God, I can't believe they're going to do this. And they do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, then it goes to the thing that I just can't stand in movies and television shows anymore, because the next scene, we're in Los Angeles and it's nighttime, and I think it's even raining or getting ready to rain. And then, oh no, I'm sorry, it goes to like the Philippines or Bangkok or somewhere, because that's where the sister is. She's at some show, right? And she's taking the pregnancy test in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And it says at the bottom, it starts typing out the graphic 1 day earlier. And I was just like, because like I said, I think it's a cool idea. I just think it's used way too much. But in this instance, I don't care, because this movie kicks ass. And the fact that the people we see in the beginning that are in jeopardy have no bearing at all to the story we're going to now watch. You know, most of the time what happens is the main character of the movie or the story of the TV show is in, mortal danger, jeopardy. Someone has a gun to their head and it looks like they're going to pull the trigger, and then you get the 6 hours earlier or 24 hours or whatever, and then we learn, we want to find out how did that person get to that point. And usually you kind of even forget that, oh yeah, that's right, that guy was holding her at gunpoint, whatever, you know what I mean? You get wrapped up in it. But in this case, I'm kind of okay with it, because the characters that we eventually are going to cut back to, they're completely immaterial to the story. You know what I mean? They're just extra folks. So I'm disappointed they used it. It really didn't spoil my enjoyment of the movie at all.
I have a counterpoint, which is it did spoil it a little bit for me, and I'll tell you why. Because I spent the entire time, when I knew, like, you tap on your screen and I'm like, okay, I've got 20 minutes left, and then 10 minutes left. I'm like, okay.
When are they going to get back to that girl?
Yeah, I spent the entire time when they were in the end sort of times of the movie going, so when do they cross paths with this girl? Like, when does it happen? Like, or just this group of people, like, how does that happen? And it did bum me out, because if it was like you said, if it was like, say, Teresa and Jessica's new boyfriend or whatever, and we, flash to one day before, and the first thing you see is like, Jessica is one of the characters that we'll see a little bit of or whatever, and then it would ground it with the thing that I wouldn't have thought about it later, because I'd be like, oh, there she is. But the fact that they weren't there at all, I was like, well, this is, Chekhov's, gun. It's they have to show back up again. I mean, I guess, because otherwise, how do you explain where they got to that point?
I would think you could call it Chekhov's scalp.
Yes, that's true.
That's the thing. And they do. I mean, the movie does pay it off at the very end and ties it all together. And again, because the movie kind of like the main story with the family and the two sisters and all that, it gets all wrapped up. And then, it kind of fades out, and when it fades up and it's the next morning, and as soon as, the door opens and Jessica comes out of her apartment in the same building, I'm like, aha, I know what they're doing. And, and again, it fit. And for me, again, as much as I don't like that trope or that technique, in this particular instance, it didn't bother me as much, because it just, again, the rest of the movie is so great and so fun. And it just zips right along and everything. That it didn't bother me. But I can definitely see that, where you're like, wait a minute, how are we going to get to the woods? It
was one of those things where, like, it bothered me, but it didn't ruin the movie in any way, shape, or form. I just would be like, oh my God, this is great. And I'm like, where are those girls going to show back up again? Never mind. And then something crazy would happen. I'd forget about it. And then for a hot second, I'd be like, when are those girls going to show back up again?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
When are those girls going to like, ooh, she's greater.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
You're
right.
like, oh, yes. Yeah. So anyway, so let's not belabor that point. So yeah,
Okay.
so then we jump backwards. One day.
One day. One whole day. And the one sister, which is Beth is her name. She's like a guitar tech for some band in, like I said, Bangkok, somewhere not in these neck of the nape here. And she is taking a pregnancy test, and she doesn't really reveal we don't see the result, but the look on her face kind of tells us that it probably came back as a year preggers.
Yeah.
And so she does what I think a lot of us do when we're in trouble is you run to family. You run to people to give you some advice, tell you things are going to be okay, all that kind of stuff, right? And so she jumps on a plane and flies to Los Angeles to go see her sister and her 3 kids and her husband. And when she gets there, we find that the building that the sister lives in is being torn down in a month. And so it's kind of fallen apart and crappy. And the husband has left. And now it's just the sister and the 3 kids. And they're, kind of in the process of finding a new place to live. Although, the sister, which the sister's Ellie is her name, and she is, it's like, hey, I got a month to leave, but it doesn't really seem like she has a new place to go yet, and you know what I mean. They're kind of like gonna milk this place to the last minute, like when the bulldozers show up, they'll leave. Is kind of my impression. And so they I know. So the sisters want to talk, and I think it's when when Beth gives out she's handing out gifts to all the kids and stuff from her travels, and she has something for the husband, and that's when and everyone is suddenly looking at their feet and she's like, what happened? And then Ellie's like, kids, go get pizza. And so they leave so that the 2 sisters can talk, and then that's when the earthquake hits. And, of course, the earthquake opens up this hole in the floor, and we kind of have heard through some of the kids talking that the story is that this building used to be a bank many moons ago. And, of course, the earthquake opens up in the basement a hole into the floor, and there's a vault down there. And so the boy, Danny, decides, well, I got to go down there and look around. And fun stuff happens when he goes down there. And I know you made a couple of comments about that. So.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, don't do that. You know what I mean?
I know, it's just like, what are you doing?
And I understand the reason that they made it a bank vault, because these kids know they're in a shitty place. They don't have money. So immediately it's going to appeal to oh my God, what if there's old money down there I could go grab or whatever. And who wouldn't do that? I wouldn't, because as soon as he went down there and he's going around, and then he eventually finds the room that the Book of the Dead is sort of hidden away in.
It's in that box that he finds.
It is in that box, but it's also it's inside a metal box inside there's a room there, and there are all sorts of crosses and St. Christopher medals and St. Benedict medals and all this other stuff, and it's like, what happened here? We have no idea.
There has to be 100 crucifixes that are suspended on string.
Oh yeah.
Over this box, and then what about the big crucifix with the big life-size Jesus that falls towards him, and he's like, and so he opens up the box, and he there's the book in there, but then there's also all of these records, these 33 and a third LP records. And one of the things that's established at the beginning of the movie is that kid is like a wannabe DJ.
Yes.
And he's got the turntables in his room and the computer, and he's doing the mixing and the and all that stuff, right? You know, and so of course when he sees the records,
he's gonna grab them.
He's be like, ooh, you know, because he's into that stuff. So yeah,
right.
And so he takes the records too, which of course is you're like, no, I'm so sorry, no, you failed. You know, you the whole family has boarded the mistake train. Yep, I'm sorry. You know, so
yeah.
So yeah, so they go back upstairs and you know, they kind of regroup, and they're, you know, the earthquake is over, and of course, you know, there's no phone service. That's going to be important in a while.
Yes.
And he goes in and he opens up and takes out the book, and it's kind of got like a Venus flytrap kind of teeth that as a clamp to keep it closed. And
all sorts of like reasons to not open it.
Right,
like,
you know what I mean?
Let's learn from this.
Oh my God, yeah, it's like, no, you don't open that. Are you freaking crazy? And I think we should point out too that when he first opens up the box, and pulls like the book's like got a cloth on it, there's like 100 roaches or something that scurry all away from it, you know. And again, I'm like, yep, I'm done, I'm out, you know. But so he and his sister, it's him, and then it's his sister Bridget, who is like a teenager, and then their little sister Cassie, who is probably like 8 maybe, right? Didn't you get this? Yeah, like
that sounds about right. Yeah.
And so Bridget comes in, and they're kind of looking at the book, and he's trying to open it, and of course he cuts his finger on one of the you know, Venus flytrap teeth. And then he does the unthinkable thing of he bleeds on the book. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, what do you do? No, it's like, have you ever seen a horror movie? You know?
Yeah, and it doesn't just the blood drops fall, and immediately it's like, and it sucks it right in, and you're like, yeah, that's not good either.
And then the teeth all open, so he can open the book, and I'm just like, no, you don't, no, yeah. So yeah, and they're kind of paging through it, and it's got all these, you know, bizarre, you know, sick drawings and stuff of, you know, people being tortured and torn apart and all kinds of crazy stuff. But to me the coolest segment was when he plays the records.
Yeah.
And again, another callback to both the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, and you remember from Evil Dead, they find the reel-to-reel tape player in the basement, and they make the mistake of playing it because, you know, the guy on the recording is like, I will now recite the summon the demon spell, and, you know, and you're like, no, you know.
Like, no, don't listen to any of that. No demons, no spells, no nothing.
Nothing, nothing. And so we kind of get the same thing, you know. These records were made in like the 1920s, I think 1923, so it literally is like 100 years old. And you hear that it's this priest, and he's found this book, and he's determined it's, you know, one of the 3 known copies of the Book of the Dead. And you know, then the next disc, or then I think on that disc, then he like is addressing like a bunch of other priests and announcing it's fine, and he tells like the book's made out of human skin, and the pages are inked in blood, and blah blah blah. And then you hear this voice in the background, you know, a lot of people are like, destroy it and burn it. And this very clear voice comes through, and it goes, you know, don't open it. It's called the Book of the Dead for a reason.
Yeah.
And that voice is Bruce Campbell.
That's awesome. I love that kind of stuff.
It is. And one of the other cool things is, the producers have been kind of coy about it, in that people have asked them, is, you know, the voice, is that the character of Ash from the other movies? And they haven't said that it is, and they haven't said that it isn't. And again, since you haven't seen Army of Darkness yet, or even Evil Dead 2, Ash has found ways to kind of jump around in time a little bit. So,
okay.
So it is entirely possible that they might be trying to set up something down the road with Bruce Campbell in the 1920s. We don't, who knows? But yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie was the records. And of course, I think the second one he puts on after this first one, that's when the guy's like, I will now recite the spell. And you're like, oh God, no. But then, again, like the saying goes, it's on like Donkey Kong, right? Because now the demons are around and they're going to, possess. And the first person that they find is the mom, is Ellie.
Right.
And I believe Ellie has decided to try and throw out some of her husband's stuff. And she doesn't want to take the stairs, so she gets in the elevator, which is kind of funny because she yelled at her kids for getting in the elevator right after an earthquake, but then she's like, I'm doing the same thing. And then I know you got a note for that, so I want to let you talk for a little bit. So.
Oh yeah. So she has the whole scene where she's possessed and she's gone, and she gets all smashed around in the elevator, and is eventually, clearly she is possessed by the demon, as it were, and she finally is able to get back to the apartment, and everybody's like, where's mom? I don't know. And there's this really great shot that has like the kids in the foreground, and in the background Ellie has shown back up, and she because there's this great, like, I watched with the what's it called, the closed captioning, and she's being stretched in the during like the possession. She's in the elevator and she's being stretched from like limb to limb and contorted, and then all of a sudden you see in the description it says bones cracking, and you're like, ah.
Well, you see her one arm get like snapped, like where the elbow moves in the opposite direction, and you're like, So that she's, broken, as it were. So there's this great shot with the kids. The front door is open. The kids are in the foreground, and she appears, and she's like sort of hobbling towards them, and there's light behind her, but you can see that like her leg is bent, her feet and ankles look like they're broken and whatever. And it's just the way that it's done with the light from behind. It's just so great. So great. Yeah,
that was, loved that.
And I would point out too, the scene in the elevator when like the cables and the wires kind of grab her by the wrists and the neck and her ankles. That is a callback to the original Evil Dead. If you remember, Ash's sister tries to run away, and she runs out into the woods, and the vegetation, like the vines and the branches, they grab her in the same way, and they kind of pull her apart, almost like they're trying to rip her arms and legs right out of her torso, kind of a thing. And so that's another little nod there. But yeah, that whole sequence then, when she kind of makes her way to the kitchen, and then she just starts throwing the eggs into the frying pan, right? Yeah. And I mean, and like the eggs, she's like, the shells and everything, right? And some of them hit the ground, and they got blood in them, and of course the rest of the family is like, are you okay? They're all like watching her like, what the hell's going on? And she tells that story like, I had the greatest dream that we were out in the woods and it was beautiful and the birds were singing. And she's like, and all I wanted to do was cut you all open so I could climb inside you and we could all be a family. And you're like, what?
It's great because you like how it's so ridiculous what she says, and they are like, they have a look on all their faces like, what the actual fuck just happened? What are you saying?
Yeah, right. Yeah, just like, holy crap. And so then, and this is a scene, this is one of my favorite scenes, she kind of staggers out of the kitchen and falls down to all fours, and then she kind of, you hear the bones cracking, right, and her back arches, you can see her spine coming out, putting a shirt, and then she just unloads this awesome white projectile vomit, and I mean, it's got to be like at least a gallon.
Oh God,
of oatmeal or whatever. I mean, it is awesome. I mean, like full bore, like Monty Python vomit. I mean, it's great.
It's crazy. It gross but awesome.
Yeah, gross but awesome. Yeah, right. Yeah. And then she dies.
Well, at least we think so.
Yeah, and of course this brings, there are a few other people that live in on the floor with them still there. Although the comment is made that the majority of the building is empty because everyone else has moved out because it's going to be torn down.
Right.
But we do meet, there are these two like teenage kids that are out there. There's like a guy in his 20s that is out there, and then there's this older dude that lives, down the hall from them too. And like I think he's Mr. Fonda, and then the guy in his 20s is Gabriel, and then you had Jake and Scott are these two brothers, and so and they come out, and you kind of get the sense that they know Ellie and her kids, and they interact with them at least enough to know who they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, of course, they're like, holy crap, what happened? And they're, we got to get help. And of course, at this point, the phones are all out, and the elevator doesn't work, and the stairs have like collapsed. So they're on like the 7th floor or something. So they're way up high.
Yep.
And so the other denizens of the floor, the neighbors, they're trying to figure out a way to like get into a room, one of the empty apartments, and there's a fire escape, and maybe they can get on that and get down to the ground and then go get help and all that. And so while all that's going on, that's when Ellie, who we thought is dead, actually comes back as a deadite, and then again, the bloody, disgusting, awesome violence begins all over again.
It does. And what's crazy is, so she sort of wakes up, and they're like, oh my God, she's okay. And of course they're mourning, so they're not reacting normal to this.
And the kids are all in shock, as you would imagine. Their mom just dropped dead. So I mean, no one is thinking clearly at all. And then suddenly, mom's okay. Wait, now I'm really confused.
Exactly. So, but when she does wake up, she's like, I'm burning, and she was physically burning up. So they're like, let's get her in the tub. So they run the bath. They put cold water in the bath, and they put her in the bath, and that was bad because she reacted very poorly to that.
She did indeed.
So much so that she was there's the phrase climbing the walls. No, she was climbing the walls.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she like jumps out of the bath and like is hanging onto the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what's great is she's doing all of that, and then eventually you can see that there's like it's almost like her body is still fighting off the demon. Kind of like, like the vomit was like sort of trying to expel whatever. And, and then she passes out and they think she's dead. She's really not. And then she revives again. She's got this moment in the tub, and she's got this like freak out moment where she's climbing the walls. And then eventually she falls back into the tub, and they're all like, what the hell just happened here? And she like does the thing with her hands, like she puts the camera's right on the edge of the tub, and she puts her nails come out, and her hands are disgusting, and she comes up, and it's a really like popular image from the movie. It's just her in the tub, like bringing her face up over the edge. And it's great because everyone else is basically like, what the fuck? But the youngest kid, Cassie, she's very earnest, and she's like, Mommy, what's wrong? Mommy, are you okay? And she's just like, because she doesn't get it, she doesn't have that. She doesn't have that like lived experience of like something terrible is happening here beyond what we're normally used to. All Cassie sees is my mommy is, sick, or she was dead and now she's not dead. What is happening? And she's confused. And she asks a question about her, and she's like, Mommy, are you okay? Or Mommy, whatever, what's going on? And, Ellie Deadite, she like smiles. She says, Mommy's with the maggots now. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. And that's like the iconic line from the movie. That was in all the trailers, and
Yes.
Yeah. And
what's great about it too is a lot of people put that on social media. Like a lot of people like, I finally got to see this movie, and Mommy's with the maggots now, or whatever. I've heard that already from this movie, but I had I had forgotten about it. It was like way in the back of my brain. And then as soon as she said it, I was like, yes, that's the line. I've been hearing it for months and months.
Yep.
Now I have the placement of it. And it's a great scene
Oh,
because
yeah.
they're still sort of coming to grips with what's going on, what happened to mommy, and just her like deadpan reaction, it's basically her version of Danny's not here.
Yeah, right, yeah.
At
At the convention in Indianapolis, one of the questions in their Q&A, someone said, "Could you do the line?" And she was like, "Oh, you guys, I'll do it, but I mean, it's don't hate me if it doesn't match." And we're just like, "Do it!" So she said the line, and of course everyone's recording it on their phones,
Of course.
But yeah, and I love too. The actor again, her name is Alyssa Sutherland is her name, and her face, it's very expressive.
Yes.
And it almost has like a clown like look to it, with like she can make her mouth, and this might have been also cosmetic effects, but I mean it's like her mouth is huge.
Yes.
Right. You know what I mean? It's like from, it's almost like the ends of her mouth are almost to her ears. It's a very creepy look that the makeup that they give her. And so when and you're right, like for the first part of the bath sequence, it's like the human part of her is still in there a little bit. And she's like telling her sister, like, don't let him get my babies, or it's inside me. Right. And that's a very common thing in the Evil Dead movies, where there will be moments where the demon will not be in total control and the person is able to kind of come back out for a little bit. But also the demon sometimes will do that to screw with you, which happens in this movie too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, at this point, like you said, when she like sticks her hands on the tub and like comes up from the edge, it's all deadite. There's no human Ellie left. And the look, and again, the way they have her, and she's got all these cuts and stuff on her face, and then she's got this massive mouth, and she's got the eyes with the contact lenses, right? So she's got this really screwed up eyes, and then she just says, "Mommy's with the maggots now." You're just like, oh, run.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. It's funny. Like you were saying the thing about the expressive face or whatever. And when you said, cause I didn't know the thing about her being a model, but it makes sense. I mean, maybe it's something she was known for, or she just knows like how to contort her face that way.
Yeah. Maybe.
And you're right. It could have been CGI'd in there, which would be like the easier thing. But if you had someone who could just practically, because they know how to, just do a really wide smile and show as much teeth and make it as creepy as possible, it makes a lot of sense. And it's great because it really benefited, because oh my God, the creepiness.
Oh yeah. And I, there is a little bit of CGI, particularly the sequence in the garage at the end.
Yes.
With the wood chipper and all that stuff. I would say from what I've read about it, about the movie, like 80% at least was practical effects. So, so hopefully in this case, when they did the makeup for her face, it was real, it was practical, and like you said, she just is able to she's just one of those people that's just got a massive mouth or something. I don't know, but it's the look of her, and again, she's plastered over all the posters and all the marketing for it. You see deadite Ellie in everything, and she is scary. I mean, it is a very creepy, unsettling look about her, and she's usually smiling, right? Kind of, and you're just like, nope, gotta go. Nope.
I don't have time for this.
Sorry, can't be
Must
staying. Right.
Flee. Thank you.
Right. So oh God, So now let's get to the cheese grater, because that was another moment. We had a great cheese grater moment in Dead City with Negan.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and
that's
when he
right.
took out Luther, right, he found the cheese grater, or the whatever, it was some kind of grater, and then we get this one, and again, as soon as it got knocked to the ground, you're just like, well, that's coming back.
We're gonna see this again. It's just, oh my God, it's so, because just when someone picks it up, I actually didn't even watch when it was used because I couldn't. This was one of my I had to close my eyes moments.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So I just, when she reaches out, and as soon as almost in contact, I'm like, and had to look away.
Right on her sister's calf.
Yeah, and
she gets a good couple grates. Yeah.
Gross.
Well, and we should point out too that when Ellie comes out of the bathroom, she's smashed. She screams. She has this long like rah! Wail, and like the mirror in the bathroom shatters, and like all of the humans are like putting their hands up to their ears. It's so loud, and it's so loud that the people that are out in the hallway down the hall trying to break in to this other apartment, they hear it. So that's going to bring them over for, horrible consequences for them. And so then when Ellie comes out of the bathroom, she's picked up a piece of the mirror, and it's like a knife. I mean, it's a huge jagged piece, and she goes straight at her sister, Beth, and Beth puts her hand up, and Ellie drives this shard of glass right through her hand.
Yep.
And out the other. I mean, so Beth is already hurt.
Yes.
By this, right? And so then she kind of pulls it out, and she tries to turn around and get away, and that's when Dead-Eyed Ellie tackles her from behind, and then cheese grates her calf. Oh, it's so great, right? And the only thing that saves her is that Gabriel comes into the apartment.
Yep.
From outside, and he's like, "What's going on in here?" And then he sees Ellie, and he's, as you'd imagine, just as surprised that suddenly she's alive, because he thought she was dead.
The last time he saw her, he led them all in a prayer in the prayer for the dearly departed, and then leaves the room, and it's like, last time I saw you, I prayed and made your family pray with me. So I'm slightly surprised
I said that
to see you open around.
Yeah. Well, and also, how about that creepy scene when he closes her eyes? And then they pop back open again, and he's like, huh? And so then he closes them again.
Let's try that again.
Yeah.
And they stayed, which is good.
They do. Yeah, they do. Yeah. So anyway, so she comes up to him, and they go spilling out into the hallway, and then great, amazing, and this is just a staple Evil Dead. I don't know why Sam Raimi really loves this, so it just kind of is matriculated into all of the Evil Dead stuff. Dead-Eyed Ellie sucks out one of Gabriel's eyeballs.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
I read that Bruce Campbell did the Foley for that effect, and you hear it get pulled out, and then one of the kids, I think it's Jake, is in the hallway, and he's just freaking out, and she spits the eyeball at him, and you get this shot of the eyeball flying through the air. And that is, again, very Evil Dead. There's always body parts, usually eyeballs, you get a shot of them in flight, and it goes right into his mouth, and he swallows it. And you're just like, I know. You're like, holy crap. I mean, so great. And so now, Gabriel's on the ground with an eyeball missing, and he's bleeding, and he's like, ah. And there are moments in this movie that the action is so frenetic and gory that you're just almost like you can't believe what you're watching.
Yeah. I mean, yes. They finally decide, at this point now, they shut the door.
Yeah, they lock her out in the hallway.
Everybody's sort of stuck they lock her out in the hallway. So they're able to lock the door and keep her out. They put some furniture in front of it. So they're all inside. Mm-hmm. Now, meanwhile, prior to her being pushed outside, one of the things she did while she was attacking everybody was Ellie is a tattoo artist.
Yes,
and
she is.
She takes the tattooing needle, and I thought of you because the tattoo needle comes really close to the eye.
Oh, to the eyeball.
But
yes,
at the last second, Bridget turns her face, and the needle goes against her cheek.
Yes.
Now, that alone probably wouldn't have done anything to Bridget, but then Mommy wants to lick the wound. Mm-hmm. So, obviously there's, grossness that enters into the cut open wound that, you know, you assume happens in that moment, then how does Danny get possessed? Does Bridget do that?
Yeah, Bridget does. Oh yeah, when Ellie,
because it's like one by one everybody starts.
Yeah, and Ellie, when Ellie has Bridget pinned, she gets the tattoo gun, the ink gun, the needle gun, and she puts it up to her head and gets some of her blood on it, and then she uses that, and that's what tattoos on Bridget's cheek.
So it's blood and like, because it's black too from the ink that she had in there. But yes, I totally forgot that she put it like into her temple.
Yes. So she gets a little of her that she tattoos onto Bridget. And so while they're all in there freaking out about what they're going to do, and of course Beth is, like literally she puts duct tape on her hand to stop the bleeding, and she puts duct tape on her calf from where she got graded. And while all that's going on, and then the kid Danny, he's all like, "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have played the record." Blah blah, so he's doing that. And Bridget, she then she's like got like a rag up on her cheek, and she's like got it pressed against it. And then she goes in and she looks in the mirror and she takes it off, and it's got like the black lines are like spreading all over her face. And she's like, huh? And so then she runs into the kitchen and she spits up all this black crap. Yeah. And then she gets a glass of water and she drinks it. And after she drinks the water, she like kind of throws up a little, but she like starts throwing up like maggots and bugs and all kinds of awful, awful stuff. And so then Beth finally has kind of repaired herself enough, and she comes out and goes into the kitchen, and she sees oh no, I'm sorry, it's not Beth, it's Danny. He goes into the kitchen, and Bridget is like up on the countertop. She's like crouched with her back. Again, a lot of people in all these movies, if you come into a room and someone has their back to you, just leave. Okay.
Or if they're doing some type of physical feat that you're like, you're attached to the ceiling, this feels weird. Run away. Just go.
Don't engage them in conversation. Just leave, because it's not going to work out. But
no, it's not going to end well for you.
So so she, he's like, "Are you okay?" And then she turns around and she's like eating a wine glass.
It's awesome.
And biting the glass, and she's like, and you hear it all, and then she swallows, and they show her throat, and you see the shards of glass pressing out against her skin, and she's like, I have to do something to kill all the maggots in my tummy, you know. And so then she literally comes at him, and I think he like lights her on fire or something, and so she kind of dies too. And so they like wrap her up in a sheet, and they like tie her up and put her in a bedroom. And so then it's just Danny and Cassie and Beth, and they're like, "What are we gonna do? We gotta get out of here." And Beth is like, Danny basically comes clean and says, "Yeah, I found this book and I found these records and I played the one and it had the spell and that's what caused all this." So Beth is like, "Well, I want to listen to the rest of the records." And he's like, "That's what started it." And she's like, "Yeah, but there might be words on there that can end this." Yeah. And they have no power, and so then we see her, and because she's a guitar tech, she's able to like solder some batteries and stuff together and get the turntables to work. And she puts on the headphones, and so she's listening in one room while the other kids are in another room. And it's, I think, at that point that Deadite Ellie hears the cat that's running around in the vents, because one of the neighbors has a cat, and he says that the earthquake scared the cat and it ran in the vents. So she goes up in the vents and is able to come out in the room where Beth is listening to the record. And of course, the information on the record that she hears is standard Evil Dead stuff. That is basically the Deadites are unkillable. Right. And the only thing you can do is like totally dismember the possessed person. That's really the only way to stop them. But you can't really you can't exorcise them. There's nothing to send them back, all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, so she comes in, and then they get another fight sequence, and then Bridget wakes up, and she's now Deadite Bridget, and I wrote down one of the lines because she comes at Danny and then she like stabs Danny right in the bicep with a huge butcher knife, and then
awesome.
she vomits like 3 gallons of blood onto his face. I mean, it's so great. You know, and he's just covered in it. And he's like and so he then dies. But before he dies, she looks at him and Deadeye Bridget goes, "I told you should have put the book back, Danny." So that was really great. So now it's just Cassie and Beth. And my favorite line of the whole movie is Cassie is like, "Are we going to make it? Are we going to be okay?" And Beth is like, "Yeah, we're going to be fine." And Cassie looks at her and goes, "You'd be a good mom someday, Auntie Beth." And she looks at her and goes, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, you know how to lie to kids."
Yeah.
It's an important skill.
It is.
So they got to try and get out, and they go out in the hallway, and this, of course, is where we get another nod to the Evil Dead because Mr. Fonda had a shotgun that he used, and sort of he's out there lying in a pool of blood because Ellie, when she's out in the hallway, she like kills all of the neighbors out in the hallway. We kind of see her doing it through the peephole in some of the scenes. But he's got his guns out there, and it is the standard Evil Dead double barrel shotgun that only holds 2 shells, and you got to crack it open and take them out, put the new ones in. So Beth gets the shotgun in about 6 rounds, and so again another little nod to the Evil Dead universe because Ash always has the same same type of shotgun in all the movies.
Right.
And Ellie comes out into the hallway, and Beth proceeds to like blow off one of her legs and then one of her arms, and it's just bloody awesome. And then the kids come out. They're all Deadites now, so Danny and Bridget are Deadites, and then like the 3 of them like merge. It's almost like, remember like the Walker King from Dead City?
Yes, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. It's the same kind of thing, and they kind of become like this super Deadite where they all kind of move as one thing, and you're like, what the hell? And so Beth and Cassie get into the elevator because that's the only place they can go, and then we get another nod to a different movie, but I know you put it on your notes, and so I will let you describe it because it's also awesome.
It's amazing because they're going down. The elevator actually is kind of going down, but it's it's filling with blood is what's happening, and it's filling and filling and filling, and there's this great shot where it shows the panel with all of the floors, and it's all lit up, but you can see like the blood rising behind it. It's really, really well done. A little extra there. And they're like, they're trying to like, can we go through the top, and no, that doesn't work because now they're on top of the elevator and they're coming after them, and they're like, well, there's nothing they can do, and it really looks like it's the end. And then the elevator goes to the bottom, the doors open in true The Shining fashion, and that blood just comes splashing out of nowhere, and they are deposited on the floor. Beth and Cassie, and it's just amazing. It's just so amazing.
And again, it must have been just, those two must have just had a ball because they're like swimming in blood. You know what I mean? They're from head to toe. Yeah. And I'm sure it was sticky and awful, but at the same time, it just must have been so much fun. Just be doing that. And also what happens, the elevator fills up with blood, and you're right. The mom and the 2 kids that are now like one thing, they're coming through like the hatch in the ceiling. So they can't get out that way. And then it cuts to one of the panels, one of the walls, and it says what like the maximum weight capacity of the elevator is. And then you hear the cables snap by the weight of all the blood. And that's what causes the elevator to drop down. And somehow they survive the the impact and everything. Maybe the blood saves them. But when the doors are, it's so great because you hear the elevator ding first on the ground floor, and then it just bing, and then the doors just like crash open, right, and the blood just spills out, and these two people just get kind of washed out. It's so gross and
it's
awesome.
Great too, because obviously it's, the blood and the elevators, totally a nod to The Shining. But I mean, in The Shining, all we got was the doors opening and then like this pool of blood. In this instance, we get the pool of blood and the people that were in there like coming out. So it's great because it's a nod, but it's got their own thing going on to make it truly their own. It's really, really well done. Yeah. Right. And from there, they run to the garage because they're like, they found the mom's keys on the floor just as they're about to go into the elevator itself. So they're like, let's get the hell out of here.
and that's kind of the final like set piece of the movie. In the parking garage in the basement, and they get down there, and the car gets stuck, so they can't get out in the car. And then of course the I think they in the closed captioning I was watching, the closed captioning referred to it as the Marauder. And that might have been the name that they gave the three, the Ellie, Danny, Bridget thing. But whatever, it shows up. And so then there's kind of a little game of cat and mouse. And they end up, Beth and Cassie make a run for the gate, because this is a kind of building that you have like a garage door opener. All the tenants do, and you click it, and that opens this gate, and then you can drive your car in or out, kind of a thing. And it's open, and the car gets stuck, and so then they're playing cat and mouse with the thing, and then the gate starts to close, and so they make a run for it, and Beth gets out, but the monster grabs Cassie and drags her back in, and don't you hate when that happens, right?
Yeah, all the time.
And so of course the monster drags Cassie over to this conveniently placed wood chipper, which is in the basement,
as like you do, right?
And so then Beth comes in, and I think also before that happens, the Deadite thing picks up a chainsaw, which again is another nod to the Evil Dead universe, because Ash always has a chainsaw. And again, it kind of makes sense that it would be there because it's a wood chipper, and there's the truck that they like will catch all the chip parts of that are being, cut up right there as well. And so it would make sense that that's like, some kind of landscaping, truck. And so they would have a chainsaw there or tools like that. So it didn't seem out of place, but they have it, and they're going to cut off the little kid's head. And Ellie, Deadite Ellie goes, "I just want your head, baby doll," which kind of cuts back to the beginning. And I know we kind of skipped over Stephanie a little bit, but we see the little girl in the beginning, and she's cutting off the head of her doll with scissors. Right. And she uses the doll, and she puts it on this like broom, and she makes this thing she's calling Stephanie to use to scare off. She's afraid of ghosts because of what her brother has kind of, planted in her mind. But anyway, it just kind of calls back to that, because now the mom's like, "I just want your head, little bit, baby doll, just like you wanted the head." And then Beth shows up, and she shoots the thing, and it drops the chainsaw. So then she gets the chainsaw, and this, of course, sets up this dramatic thing where eventually the wood chipper consumes all of the Deadites. And the very last bit is just Deadite Ellie's head. And she looks at her sister, and she's like, "You really do look like Mom." And then she goes, "And you're gonna fail at being a mother just like she did." And then she starts to call her like, you like slut groupie. And then I think she used the "see you next Tuesday" word. And right at that moment, Beth like kicks the head into the chipper, and
perfect.
All goes.
Absolutely perfect.
But there's a great moment when the monster is starting to get stuck in the chipper, and you see the funnel that's shooting out all of the waste, and it's like a sprinkler. It's like moving back and forth at like a 80-degree angle, and then they cut to a scene, and it's inside the car that they tried to get out in, and you hear the blood from the inside hitting like the top and the windshield, and it's just a lovely little bit of sound design that you're just like, yeah, that's what that would sound like, you know, and it's just blood everywhere. Oh, it's so great. It was so great. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I loved it. And what's great is as soon as, there's so much blood, there's so much gore in that final scene, and it's everywhere. And of course it's splashing everywhere. And, to sort of push them into the chipper, Beth is at points, she's using the chainsaw. So there's just spatter everywhere.
Oh, and she is just covered again.
Oh God. Yeah. So her whole face, everything she's wearing, she's completely covered. So those last few moments with Beth and Cassie, she is just like, her face is dyed completely red, and all you have is her big bright white eyes. She's wearing like a darker colored shirt, and she looks spot on, so much like Ash in that moment, like Bruce Campbell, that I was like, Bruce Campbell, bloody face, achievement unlocked.
Yeah, and actually that moment when she picks up the chainsaw and the creature starts coming at it, and Beth looks at it and goes, "Come get some." Yeah. And that is a nod to Army of Darkness, because that's the same line that Ash uses when he's taking on a whole bunch of Deadites in that movie. So again, another little callback to the original series that, for me, I'm like, that's really cool. For you, because you haven't seen it yet, you're kind of unaware. It didn't really bother you. It's not like you missed out on something. It's just a cool line for her to say,
Yeah.
And the last scene when she grabs Cassie by the hand, and again, like you said, they are just crimson except for the whites of their eyes, right? And they start walking out, and then she stops and she looks back at the chainsaw, and she goes back and she picks it up, and they leave with it.
Yep.
And that's the end of their story. And this is a little bit of a divergent from the Evil Dead movies, because in most of on all the other Evil Dead movies, there's usually just one survivor at the end.
Right.
And so in this case, we got two, in that Cassie and Beth both survived. But again, what we were saying at the beginning with, you're sort of like, how are we going to get back to the cottage and the drone and the scalping and all that stuff? Right, we do. So they leave, and then it like cuts to like later that morning, and we see Jessica, who's the possessed girl, and she lives on the 5th floor of this apartment building. And she comes out of her apartment, and she's got her bags all packed and everything. And she is in her own little world, and she goes and she hits the elevator. And of course the elevator is, in the basement full of blood. Right. So it's not coming up. So she takes the steps down, and she calls Teresa, the scalp girl, on the phone. And the scalp girl's like, yeah, I was thinking I would kind of I'm not going to go to their weekend retreat. And you're kind of like, you really should have followed through on that. Yeah, right. You really should have gone with your gut on that one. But Jessica's like, nope, I'm picking you up in 15. We're going to have a great time, blah, blah, blah. So she hangs up the phone. She gets in her car in the basement. Again, totally oblivious, right? There's blood everywhere. The one car is sitting in the middle of the parking lot. There's this massive crack where the earthquake happened. Not seeing any of it. She's just in her own little world. And when she gets in her car, that's when she starts to kind of look around and be like, what happened? Kind of like huh? So she makes the tragic mistake of getting out of her car to look around. And she sees all the blood and all the gore and all the stuff that's all over. And she, kind of freaks out, and she gets her phone to try and call 911. And then we see the demon cam, the sort of the POV of the demon closing in on her. And the very last scene of the movie is she kind of like looks right at the camera, and it's coming right at her. And then she goes, ah! And then it just smashes to black. And then you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It possessed her, and then, her friend came and got her, and they went up to the cabin. So there you go.
Yeah. My only thing that I didn't like at that ending was it felt like, how was she able to use the stairs?
Yeah.
Unless it was a completely separate set of stairs but usually a big apartment building like that, they'll have one at either end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is it possible she was in a different one? I don't know. But it bothered me. But
the only thing I would say is that if you watch it again, when there's a scene where it's Ellie is she's just collapsed and she's seizing and kind of foaming at the mouth, and so Beth and Danny drag her out into the hallway because they're like, we got to get her to a doctor. And they go to the elevator, and the elevator is not really working at this point because, again, Ellie was in there when the cables got her and all that stuff.
Right.
So it's kind of out of order now. And so then Danny, she's like, let's use the stairs. So then Danny opens the stairwell, and there's a shot of looking down, and like their landing and like the next floor landing are gone. It's just rubble. But then below that, the rest of the stairs are there.
Okay.
Because you can kind of see down the stairwell right all the way to the bottom. So, again, Jessica at the end, she's not really at all sensing.
Yeah, she's totally oblivious.
Yeah, so when she went into the stairwell, she didn't look up, she didn't notice, she just took the stairs down to get to her car type thing. So I think that's what it was, but again, it could have also, like you said, it could have just been another stairwell on her part of the building that was unaffected and she just took it. But I believe that would be the reason, is that the stairs, not all of them collapsed, just a couple of floors. Again, conveniently isolating them. So
right. Yes. But just such a great sort of classic ending to that they came back to it, and it's really only like 2 minutes of time with Jessica at the most. And I like too that it makes a statement about like the generation that is literally just attached to their phone, and they're on like a like a FaceTime call, and they're literally paying attention to nothing around them. And I'm sure that there's parents out there that were like, you could walk by a dead body and you wouldn't even notice.
Even notice.
Here you go. Here's our evidence of that. So
yes.
Before we go ahead and take a break, anything we didn't hit on? I wrote down too that I felt like the wood chipper thing was a nod to Fargo too. Like
Absolutely.
I thought that was great.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
I know you put down the Dead by Dawn line.
Yeah.
Which again it's a callback to Evil Dead 2.
Okay.
Which you just say because you haven't seen it yet. Which we are going to have to remedy that at some point. That's the ghoul or the Deadites, I should say, in Evil Dead 2. They say that to Ash quite a bit, that you'll be dead by dawn, and all that. And so I again, the way it happened when it's in the hallway, and Jessica and Danny and Bridget are all out there, and they're all Deadites, and then all the other people in the hallway, they all come back as Deadites.
Yes.
And they're all looking at these two people, at Beth and Cassie, and they're like, dead by dawn, and it's a wonderful little callback. So that was cool.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the movie, when when Ellie sends the kids out for pizza.
Yep.
When they get back into the garage, and that's when the earthquake happens. And so Bridget is holding the pizza boxes, and she drops them, and Cassie has like all the drinks, and she drops them too, and they like go run to find some safe place to kind of like an archway or something, right, to find the support so they don't get crushed by rubble or whatever. When the earthquake is over, they go back over to the pizza, and we see the pizza boxes, and on the cover of the pizza box it says Henrietta's Pizza. And the slogan is "Come get some" at the bottom. But the image is this kind of older woman, and she has her hair like up almost in like a bun kind of a thing, and she has glasses. That is a callback to Evil Dead 2, where the professor's wife is named Henrietta. And she looks like that, and she's a Deadite in Evil Dead 2, So she's like a possessed version of that. But anyway, that is another little nod to the original franchise by throwing that in there. That again, for me, I'm like, that's really cool. For you, you're kind of like, oh, they ruined all the pizza.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I was going to say about the Dead by Dawn moment that I think what's cool about that is that I put a note in there about it because I thought it was a great moment. It's super cool and very creepy to be saying that. And I have no context for that. So I didn't know that it has anything to do with or call back to the other movies. And I just thought it. So I think that, I hate to say it, but like me including certain things here and there and make it show how good this movie is because it's standalone. Like you don't have to be like a super fan that's seen every movie to appreciate the moment. Like that's a creepy moment. You know the background. I mean, if you do, that gives you that great extra layer of like enjoyment. But without it, it's still an awesome creepy moment. And the movie is filled with them. Absolutely filled.
Absolutely filled. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And when I got done seeing it in the theater the first time, my initial thoughts were, how does this fit in with the rest of them? Because the rest of them are not in Los Angeles, right? They all involve Ash Williams, and they're usually in Michigan because that's where those guys all lived and grew up and so on. And it's obviously it's a different book. It's not the same Necronomicon. If you remember from Evil Dead, the Necronomicon that we see, it has kind of a face on the cover. This did not, So I was kind of battling or questioning I really like this movie. I'm just not sure how it fits into this universe that is so expansive that we've got 3 other movies and a television series and so on. There's a lot of other material there that all does fit together. And when I started rewatching it, it just came to the point where it didn't really bother me. You know what I mean? I'm just like, this is just a separate story. And if it doesn't absolutely match up, I'm fine with it. That's cool. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just like you said, there's so many well done, gross out moments and creepy moments in this movie that I just love it. It's just fun.
Yeah, I can't say enough about it. I think we did cover everything. I don't think there's anything we didn't really hit upon. Unless you can see something.
No.
You did include the Chekhov scissors, which was great.
Oh, yeah.
In the we get the opening scene when we're learning about the kids, and you see Cassie cutting the heads off of the dolls, and and Ellie's like, "Where's my scissors?" Cassie's like, "I don't have them," and she slides them under the bed, and we don't see him again until Cassie is under the bed while Beth is fighting with Ellie. Cassie is like, "Auntie Beth," and she pushes the scissors to her, and she gets the scissors and she just stabs them right into Ellie's head, and that's how they're able.
It's up her nose.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like a really good headshot.
Oh God, is it great?
Yeah, and so they're able to. Her being sort of immobilized by that for a brief moment is how they're able to get out of the apartment and start trying to get away. That moment happens right before they get into the hallway. And, little by little, the others in the hallway are like, don't, the one who's like, "Don't take my gun. That's my gun, you groupie bitch," and all of that other stuff. Yeah. But it's so great. And another really great headshot was the Stephanie, which was her doll head on the staff, which they were fighting with earlier, and she snapped it. And it was, a pokey stick, Chekhov's pokey stick, when she stabs Bridget with it, and it goes in the mouth, out the back of the head. And it does immobilize Bridget a little bit, but Bridget is the one that pulls it out, which
it's so great.
So good. It was literally like the opposite of, remember that scene in Fellowship of the Ring when they are fighting the orcs in like one of the final scenes of the movie, and it's the one where Boromir dies. Spoiler. But there's like the head of all the orcs, and he's fighting with Aragorn. and Aragorn gets him in the stomach with his sword, and the head orc, he takes the hilt and he's like, ah, and he pushes it all the way in.
So he can get closer to Aragorn.
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, but he's basically saying, I don't give a shit about
right.
your stupid sword, you manly man. And he just like pushes it all the way in. And it's such an opposite response that, you know, obviously, you know, Aragorn is like, what the actual fuck? Like, who are these creatures, right? Yeah, you see it on his face. But this is like the opposite of that. Bridget gets it in the face, in the mouth, out the back of the head, and she just starts pulling on it slowly. And you know that there's splinters inside her. Not that that's going on, but she's pulling and pulling, and she gets it all the way out, and then she collapses down.
But yeah, that whole look when she gets it out, and then she kind of turns to look at them, and they're like, what do we have to do? You know, and then finally she kind of just, you know, crumples into a ball. Yeah. Yeah, that was again another just amazing effects moment. There's also too, Danny, you know, is carrying around the like Michael Myers starter knife, right, which is this butcher knife that's like a foot long, and when Bridget comes at him and she's still in the sheet, she runs right into the knife and it's buried up to the handle in her like stomach, and then she again pulls it out very slowly, and you're just like, oh my god, and you hear that kind of
the Foley is so great.
The sound design is so awesome in this movie. It's amazing. And then she proceeds to to stab Danny in the bicep and goes right through his arm into the countertop. And so he's like stuck, you know, he's like pinned to the thing. I mean, it's the effects in this movie are just unbelievable and just unbelievably gory, you know, where you're like, well, they can't do any worse. Yeah, they can. You know, I mean, it's unbelievable. There's the only thing I want to add is there's a little moment. It's when Ellie has been laid out on the bed and they've prayed, and so then those guys are gone, and Beth comes back in and she sits down and she's like kind of talking to Ellie, and she's like, I really, you know, you got to tell me what to do. You know what I mean? She's like freaking out. And then she hears this like sound from the bed because, you know, again, she's like sitting with her back to Ellie. Again, why? Right?
Don't do that.
But she is. And so then she turns around and Ellie's eyes are open again. And there's a fly that lands and I'm sure this was CGI. This is probably one of the times, but the fly like walks right across Ellie's eyeball, one of her eyeballs, and then it flies away. And then Ellie suddenly she like looks to her left, and it's such a cool, effect where the fly's on her eyeball, and then suddenly she moves, and you're like, uh-oh, that ain't good.
I forgot about the fly.
Yeah. And then also when they put her in the water and she starts reacting, violently, and almost like she's being burned. Yeah. There's a shot of her and she like is like screaming, and her eyes, if you remember, they roll up into her head. Yes. And so like her pupils completely go away, and then you see like the bottom part of her eye and they're almost red. I mean, again, I'm sure it's a CGI shot in this case, but it's really cool. And you're just like, oh my god, what's you know what I mean? You're like, what? Oh my god, what's going on? I mean, it's just bizarre and weird and creepy. And there are so many great moments like that in this movie. So if you guys haven't seen it yet, it's on HBO Max right now. I'm sure it's available, for like paid streaming on some other services as well. But totally worth it if you like this kind of stuff, because they do it really well.
Yes. And may I give a suggestion? There are a couple of scenes in the movie where I wouldn't be eating your dinner while you're watching it. You'd think I'd learn.
You think so?
Yeah, but I made that mistake. So I would say for the first like 15, 20 minutes, yes, have your dinner, but then after that, when things really, the shit starts hitting the fan, I'm not sure that this is the movie to watch, to eat a meal with. I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah, so take my advice. So that wraps it up for our coverage of the movie. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss the listener feedback that we received, which is great. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up on the podcast.
All right, so everybody please stick around. We will be right back.
The following is an emergency action message. Civil authorities have identified a biological threat that they deem credible. This threat could potentially affect the entire continental United States.
The dead are returning to life and attacking the living.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man on bed and he's attacking another man. Looks like he's biting him, like on the arm.
The initial signs are puzzling, unclear.
Getting pulled out of their cars and thrown to the ground. It looks like the bus passengers are biting their victims.
Soon, however, the reality is clear and undeniable.
The crisis involving the recently dead continues. Parliament today passed a law that requires all bodies of the recently deceased to be registered and turned
Toxic
over.
Bag Productions has captured the sounds of the zombie apocalypse and brought them to your gaming table. Background ambiences, zombie attacks, and radio transmissions that set the scene for your modern zombie adventure. Download MP3s from DriveThruRPG.com or ToxicBag.com.
Hi, I'm Ross Marquand, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And remember, always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Hey everybody, we are back. We're going to jump right into our feedback we received for Evil Dead Rise, and then we're going to go from there to some other feedback and talk about what's coming up on the podcast. So, Steve, why don't you get started with our feedback for Evil Dead Rise?
All righty. Wow, this is really cool. We got a bunch of feedback. I was very impressed with that. And I was kind of thinking, it's not Walking Dead, so, maybe some people will listen to it, but they won't send their thoughts. But we got a whole bunch, so that's really cool.
Yeah, we did.
Thanks guys. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. All right, so we start off, and we're in the international desk. We're going across the pond to our English listener, Bev2. Hello, Bev.
Hey there, Bev.
And she left this comment on the Facebook, and she said, "I love this. It had the fun, over-the-top gore of the originals, but also the straight-up scares of the previous film, and that's the 2013 Evil Dead with Jane Levy's. So if you have not seen that, you should definitely put that on your list, because it's very similar to what this movie is. So if you like this, I'm sure you will like that too." She goes on to say, it also didn't take too long to get going, and once the roller coaster ride started, it didn't stop. It's just a really solid horror film with some great gore and genuinely creepy moments. And, Bev, I think it's like you read our minds of what we were going to say on this review, because that's pretty much what we just got done saying for an hour and a half.
Yeah. It's so good. Thanks so much for writing in, Bev.
Yes, thanks so much, man. Hope the weather is treating you well over there.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, too, about getting feedback for this episode is we get lots of regular feedback from, like, when we cover a show from week to week, whether it's Walking Dead or Fear or whatever. But when we do, like, a one-off with a movie, and, we'll get, like, maybe one, maybe two people that are like, I love that movie. Or, yeah, I just watched it again recently or whatever. But yeah, we got way more than we normally do for like just a one-off podcast about a movie. So thanks everybody for writing in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So next up, Alma Contreras, our pal. She wrote in via the Facebook. Hey, Alma. Thanks so much.
Hello, Alma.
Alma actually wrote in twice. So I put out a call for feedback, and her first reaction was, oh, damn it. Y'all are going to have me rewatching this flick. And she used the emoji where you're like covering your eyes with your hands. So you're like, I can't watch. So first she's mad because she was going to have to rewatch. So then she writes back in again and she's like, okay, I just got done rewatching. And then she used the emoji still that's covering its face. But then she put like 4 blood droplet emojis. I'm like, so where are you going with this, Alma? So she writes, all right, so I just got done rewatching. so much freaking blood. I didn't find it scary, but it definitely was gory. I don't usually like my horror quite this bloody.
All right.
So when you say bloody, do you mean like a elevator filled with blood? Like that's too much? Is that where the cutoff is what I want to know.
Or is it, say, when one character like vomits like 10 gallons of blood into the face of another character?
I mean, it looked like it was very cleanly. Like that didn't infect Danny at all when that
No, I no, not at all. You're correct.
No, I'm sure he came out fine from that. Or, maybe like Gabriel, maybe he just loses the use of like one eye.
One of his eyeballs. Sure. I think it's something. I think we can go that way. Yeah.
Great feedback, Alma. I'm sorry that I made you watch it again. Well, you sort of half watched it because you had your hands in front of your eyes. So I won't be fully blamed. So just so you're aware. But thanks for writing in and going back and watching the movie again so that you can put some fresh feedback in there. I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I do too. That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so moving along. Next piece of feedback also came via the Facebook. I think pretty much all the feedback came via.
We sure did.
Facebook,
it was a Facebook friendly.
There you go. And this one is from our listener Teresa Harper.
Teresa.
Hello, Teresa. How are you doing? And she says, I didn't like it. It was too dark and kind of cartoonish. Just my opinion. And then she put a couple of smiley emojis. And that's fair. You're right. It is very cartoony and the violence is very over the top to where you almost kind of laugh when it's happening because it's so gory and so bloody, right?
Yes.
But again, that's kind of the Raimi style. When they made Evil Dead, they wanted to make a funny, comedic horror movie. Mm-hmm. And Evil Dead 2 came along, and it's a little bit more serious, but it still has those kind of bloody moments, and there's some great Bruce Campbell physical comedy moments in there too. So the whole series has always kind of had that, kind of tongue firmly in cheek, kind of winking at the audience the whole time of like, we're just having a good time here, right? Yeah. So and I think they followed right along. But I can definitely see how, if you're looking for a more straightforward horror movie, this might not, satisfy you because of that. And, you're right. It is kind of cartoony and over the top in points. But again, that's kind of its DNA. But definitely a valid point, though.
Excellent. And when I read it at first, I was like, do we mean like dark themes or was there just not a lot of light in the
it was very when everybody was covered in blood, it was very dark because they was just absorbing all
their eyes.
That's right. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, there is a moment where she wipes Cassie's face and like her cheeks are kind of clear, right? But that was it. Other than that, it was just the whites of their eyes. So.
Yeah, basically that's it. Thanks for writing in, Teresa. We appreciate it. Even though you didn't like it, you let us know how you felt.
We appreciate the feedback. That's
awesome. So next up, we got some feedback from I think I have here that he is a amateur podcaster of some kind, Jason Kowalski.
Oh, I think the amateur thing is not a thing anymore. He can no longer compete in the podcast Olympics.
I was clearly poking fun.
Jason
I see. Has a whole podcast network and is like the godfather of Walking Dead podcasts. So he's Mr. Walking Dead Cast and Podcastica and dude, what are they covering right now? Yellow Jackets. I'm sure they're covering the Ahsoka series. They're always doing stuff there. I think they did. It'll come to me. Anyway, he does a lot of podcasts. He's a busy guy.
He is. Yeah, and the fact that he left us feedback is really freaking cool.
I've been lucky enough to appear on a couple of podcasts with Jason and for his network. So he's as they would say on Pod Save America, he is a friend of the pod. So thanks for writing in, Jason. We appreciate your feedback. Jason says this about Evil Dead Rise. He says, I loved it. But now I don't quite look at my cheese grater the same. And you shouldn't.
You should not.
That was quite the scene.
It was so great.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just, for, I don't know about you, but when I watch that, it's like my leg hurts when she starts, you're just like, ow, ow, it's not quite finger trauma with me, but it's definitely there. I mean, it was so great. No pun intended. It was so great.
Yeah. Thanks for writing in, Jason. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot,
write in
man.
some
That's
more.
So cool. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
All right. So we also we got a bit of feedback in for Dead City, which was the series we covered previous to this, and this came from our pal Andy from Germany, and Andy is usually about a week behind the States in terms of getting to see the episodes, so he didn't get to see the last episode 6, until after we had covered it. So this feedback came in, kind of after that episode. But we wanted to include it because Andy always has really interesting and good points and is very thoughtful with his feedback. And I love to hear what he has to say, particularly of the Walking Dead stuff. So he starts out by, and this came via email, and he says, "Hello, Diana and Steve. About your question, I watched Dead City because of your podcast." And I guess we must have asked him if he was going to keep watching maybe after the first episode, because I remember he said it didn't really grab him as much as it did for us. But
right. Yeah.
But so he goes, anyway, he says he's been watching it because of our podcast. He goes, so I'd probably watch a second season. I watched the last episodes in double speed with subtitles. This works quite well, but I do prefer Fear over Dead City. That's very interesting.
Ooh. Gauntlet thrown.
Hey, absolutely. And he's kind of got a little, he's channeling a little bit of Grace there. If you remember, Grace would listen to those, those books on tape at like triple speed, right? Because she didn't have much time. So, anyway, he goes on to say, the ending made no sense to me. A toe of Herschel protects the Dama. Why can't Negan simply kill her and tell the Croat that he is the boss now? That's a good point.
Yes.
I think the Dama is that the Croat is so enamored with the Dama and so under her spell that if Negan were to kill her, that would be bad for Negan and Herschel and Maggie. Like the Croat would go on bloody revenge to her or something. But that is an interesting point. I kind of wondered that too a little bit myself in the end of that episode when they're in her dressing room area and she pours the brandy for him and stuff. It's like, why don't you just kill her right now? And then you can either leave or you can run the place, either way. But again, then there's no season 2, so that's probably why they didn't do it. Yeah, he goes on to say, I found Virginia from Fear the Walking Dead more convincing as a group leader than the Dama. The Pioneers were not a psychopathic community. Virginia's father was the leader of the Pioneers, and she followed him. It was probably decided when her father was still alive that she would be the next leader. There is no way, though, that a psychopathic group like that in Dead City would follow the Dama. And then he finishes by saying, greetings from Germany, Andy. And, Andy, I got to tell you, I've kind of blocked out a lot of the Virginia stuff, so I did not remember that reveal that her dad was the leader. Probably, you're right. The only thing I can say about the Dama and her group is that she has the Croat running all of the Baruzzi guys, right? Yeah. And I think he's scary enough that they would follow him, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Like, I kind of agree with him. Like, we just sort of accept that the Dama is the person in power here, and with no other information. And I mean, I guess you just have to assume, they've shown that Negan doesn't want to be that guy anymore. And when he falls into his Neganness, that it kind of disgusts him. He doesn't like it. Right. Now, the old Negan would have totally killed the Dama, grabbed that glass of brandy and been like, oh God, I prefer gin, and then taken over the whole place and whatever. That's definitely what the old Negan would have done.
Right. Yeah. He'd be running the place in 10 minutes.
Right. And I think because we know that he doesn't want to be that person anymore, I kind of mentally allowed the Dama to be the person in power without consequence from him. So it didn't bother me as much, but I can totally see Andy's point that, here's this person, we don't have any idea what the power structure is, just that the Croat can be summarily dismissed without question.
Right. With a wave of a hand, right?
Yeah. So, I mean,
it's kind of the staple in these kind of shows, any kind of apocalyptic series, that the main characters seemingly always come upon a group that they're going to have to, they're going to be the antagonists, and you're always kind of like, really, how did this group get started? Who would ever put that guy in charge or that girl in charge? You know what I mean? It's just kind of a thing that, apparently when the world ends, the crazy people are going to be the ones that survive. And so then they can form these sort of, weird societies. And I think Lisa Dupre brought this up when we were doing that episode about why is it in all these things that these weird ass societies are able to spring up seemingly overnight and have all these things established about how crazy they are, when it's like, why don't our people run into more people like our people?
Right.
And I think the answer is that's boring television, but it is a very valid point.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, valid points, Andy. And I think it's going to be, considering with the strikes happening in Hollywood right now, it's going to be quite a bit before we see season 2. When they do get back into production, though, if memory serves, they went into production for Dead City, and we got that season, 6 months later, 7 months later? It feels like a short period of time.
Well, I think, they announced it, and it was probably about a little more than a year ago that they announced it, because they've still had the final episodes, the last trimester of The Walking Dead, to go through. And because, again, we were kind of bemoaning the idea that, well, now we know those two characters aren't going to die.
Yeah.
And it was at the same time that they said they were going to do the Daryl and Carol show. And so we were like, well, those two characters aren't going to die. So we were kind of like, gee, guys, thanks for spoiling a lot of stuff for us. So, yeah, I think that was a pretty quick turnaround from when they announced it to when, they air. I mean, like you said, it was less than a year, maybe 11 months, 10 months from when they announced it to when the first episode aired. So, yeah, pretty quick. But again, only 6 episodes.
Yeah. So and we don't know, when they do season 2, will they expand it to 8 or 10? It's, who knows?
And it did kind of have a small cast for Walking Dead purposes, right? I mean, the main show has 100 people and Fear has 50 people. And this show had 6 people. So, again, a little bit easier to film. And I don't know if that was they were dealing with COVID issues, so they couldn't have massive numbers of folks around or not. But that certainly would contribute to them being able to produce stuff quicker. So,
yeah. So great points, Andy. And it's going to take us a bit to sort of see how the relationship with the Dama plays out, but I hope we can revisit this sometime sooner rather than later.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So speaking of shows in the Walking Dead sort of spectrum, that's what's going to be coming up next on the podcast. We're just under 3 weeks. It's about 17 by the time this episode comes out, it'll be about 17 to 18 days until the premiere of Daryl Dixon goes across the ocean and still doesn't get clean in any way. Even when he's surrounded by water, he's still a dirty mess. I don't know if that's what the show is about, but we are going to let you know all about it when that show premieres.
Well,
whether or not he decides to start using, soap.
Hey, look where he's going. He's going to France. I mean, those people, they don't bathe there either. They just slap perfume on themselves. So this is a perfect place for him to go. Those are his people. It's his tribe.
Now, here's hoping they actually still have some perfume. I mean, post-apocalypse, is that even a thing? Who knows?
That's true.
Yeah.
Maybe they got to make their own.
It's true. They did release a little bit of information. There's like trailers all over the place, and art and new photos. I feel like every day there's something new coming out that they're sort of sending out this stream of information just to keep interest sort of peaked for this. And one of the things they released was, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, have you seen, like, they've started doing like little spotlights on some of the other cast members and the characters they're going to play? And
yet.
Yeah, like I'm kind of like you. I'm like I'm really trying to avoid all that stuff. But I'll go to like Instagram or something, and I'll be just kind of scrolling around, and there'll be a thing, and there'll be one of the actors, and it'll be like, I play the character, Gerard, and he was like a gym teacher, and I'm like, I don't want to know, and I just keep scrolling by. So they're doing that as well. On social media, at least, I'm sure on television and on the web and stuff as well. They're kind of getting out again, like you said, to keep driving interest and kind of give a little peek into what's coming up. But I'm like you. I'm like, I don't want to know. I just want to watch it and have it unfold as I'm watching it. So
yeah. So I am interested. I'm curious to see where they go. I'm so curious about the how the hell did he end up in France thing. I'm so excited to see, walkers in a completely different environment, etc. So I am excited. The one thing that they did release just today or the day before, I think it was just today, is they've released the titles of the first 3 episodes. So the premiere episode, oh boy, we're going to have to use Google Translate a lot for the first season. So they are all in French. So pardon my French, but L'Âme Perdue is episode 1, which translates to The Lost Soul. Episode 2 is Alouette, and that is Lark. And then episode 3 is titled Paris sera toujours Paris. I'm really sorry, French people. We are clearly going to make fun of France. And that title translates to Paris will always be Paris. Interesting titles. Google Translate is going to be used a lot over the next 2 months, I'd say, because everybody's going to want to know what everything means. I bet there'll be signs and things in the background. Everyone's going to be Googling, what does this mean in English? All these French things. So get ready, Google Translate. You owe, I think Walking Dead universe is going to owe you a little bit of money. So that's going to be what we cover on the next podcast episode. So you've got a little bit of a break, and we'll be covering the premiere episode. We're going to record a day late, just so that you're aware. For feedback, we'll put out our usual request for feedback, but I am coming back from my week vacation on the day that it premieres, and I just won't have enough time to sort of get my feet underneath me. So we're going to record on Tuesday for the premiere. So you guys will have 2 full days to get your feedback to us instead of the usual day after it premieres. I haven't heard whether or not it's going to be on the app early, like the Thursday before, the way some of the other shows have been, but I can't imagine they wouldn't do that. Don't you think?
I would think they will. Now, maybe for the premiere episode, they wait till Saturday or something. But I think once it's started, I think it'll be like business as usual. And so Thursdays they'll drop on AMC Plus.
Yeah. So if you get to see the episode a little earlier, just like we've said before, you may not see a feedback thread on Facebook or Twitter just yet. So feel free to shoot us an email, send it to us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll hang on to that feedback for a couple of days until we record, and we'll go ahead, of course, include it in. And also, in case anyone cares, which they don't, Fear the Walking Dead is back on 10/22, and in case anyone cares, which they don't, the titles of the first 2 episodes for Fear the Walking Dead are Anton is episode 1 of the second half, but it's technically episode 7 of season 8. And the second episode of the second half, also episode 8, is Iron Tiger. So episode 7 is Anton, and episode 8 is Iron Tiger.
I'd say I disagree. I think that the first episode the correct title is 6 Left to Go.
Yes.
And then the second episode should be titled 5 Left to Go.
Yes. What's funny is the day we're recording right now, we're recording on the 23rd. We'll probably drop this episode later tonight, but most of you will see this in your feed probably tomorrow morning, I would assume. But as we record this on the 23rd, this is the anniversary date of when Fear the Walking Dead premiered. Oh, there was a post about it earlier today, 8 years ago. So 8 or 9 years ago. And
it was 9.
Yeah. And I responded to the post that I saw and shared it in our feed because it's just funny because the pictures they used were those ones of Nick when he's like got the shirt on that's like showing off his chest or whatever. And you know that he's going to end up running away from that church any minute now. And,
right.
and I was like, we just talked about this. We just talked about this episode and this scene. So yeah, and I put a little note there that said, regardless of how the show has ended up, it did start off with a bang. And I still think that opening scene and him running away and being afraid of what he just saw because he doesn't know what he just saw because he wakes up from the drug stupor. It's still a really great scene. Really, really great scene. So.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so that's going to do it for us this week. Anything else we need to hit before we wrap it up?
No, I don't think so. We're kind of in that weird, pause here before everything gets going again. And it's going to be interesting to see once we get past Thanksgiving with the strike and everything about what's going to be coming out because, what's going to be coming out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have a feeling that they're going to hang on. They're going to get millions of people watching Rick and Michonne. So they're not going to put that out until they have other things in their back pocket to either put with it or whatever. So plan on, even though they keep being vague about 2024 or early 2024, expect that to move a little bit. Yeah, we may not even see that until mid 2024, depending on how things go.
Yeah, and I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I do have one other thing to add, and that is, we went to Flashback Weekend.
We did
a couple of weeks ago, and I got to meet a bunch of folks, but one person in particular I got to meet was Skeet Ulrich, who of course was Billy Loomis in Scream, and he was and a bunch of other. He's in The Craft, and again, working actor who's in As Good as It Gets, right, and so on. And when I was having him sign my Scream poster, we got to talking about stuff, and I just said, "Hey, what's your feeling on the strike?" And he told me that he's hoping that they will have something settled by the new year.
Okay.
So that's his hope, his best case scenario.
Yeah, that's not good.
If things work out well, it'll be, early January, late December kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, that means, we've got 5 months of no production being done for anything anywhere. Again, that's the best case. If the studios continue to drag their heels, it could go even longer. So, yeah, I think everybody should be prepared that, stuff that has been announced is going to get pushed, like you said. We don't even know how complete is the Rick Michonne show. If there's still stuff that needs to be done on it, that stuff obviously isn't being done. So, then now we're talking about, okay, they have to come to an agreement, and then everybody has to get back to work, and then they got to finish what they're doing. So just, 2024, I think it could be a time to kind of pull out those old DVDs and Blu-rays and kind of rewatch old stuff, because there might not be a lot other than like sports ball and reality TV.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, we probably should start planning now for what we want to cover when Fear is finished.
When it's finished, right? We should, yeah.
Yeah,
because what do we want to do on January 1, just in case? Because there might not be anything. So if anyone has any suggestions, there's a couple series we've been eyeballing and talking about. So we have a couple ideas. But if anyone else has anything else out there that they've watched that they think would be cool, please drop us a note and let us know, and we will consider it.
Awesome. All right. So that's going to do it for us this week, folks. Thanks so much for listening in. We love covering these one-off movies every now and then. So thanks for following along while we did that. And we love chatting about it. So, we look forward to talking to you again when we start talking about Darren Dixon series. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots just don't work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
It's fine. I'm okay with that.
That's all right.
I'd rather be called a heathen and not have to go to church than have to deal with.
Yeah, they can call you heathen all you want. You'll be sleeping in on Sunday.